Federal agents are working tonight to get to the bottom of a rash of bomb scares up and down the East Coast. The targets are mainly prominent Democrats as well as CNN, and locations range from New York to Florida. Amna Nawaz begins our coverage.
After a string of explosive devices were sent to two former Democratic presidents, senior officials, and a high-profile party donor, President Trump today pledged action. He promised the full resources of the government to bring to justice those responsible for what he called despicable acts.
In these times, we have to unify. We have to come together and send one very clear, strong, unmistakable message that acts or threats of political violence of any kind have no place in the United States of America.
Authorities say they were able to safely remove or detonate the devices sent in packages targeting some of the biggest names in the Democratic Party. The discoveries unfolded at a dizzying pace. Earlier this week, a suspicious package was found in the mailbox at the compound of billionaire George Soros in Bedford, New York. Last night, a similar package was found headed to the home of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in Chappaqua, New York. Early this morning, another one, this time sent to the Washington, D.C. home of former President Barack Obama. A few hours later, a package addressed to former CIA Director John Brennan sent to the CNN office in New York City. That package triggered an alarm to evacuate the building.
Excuse me, that sounds like a fire alarm here. We'll keep you posted on that. But
forcing journalists to continue reporting from the streets outside their building.
Shelter in place.
ABC News later tweeted a photo of what it said was the bomb sent to CNN, recovered by the New York Police Department. Authorities say all of the packages contained a pipe bomb, and they suspect the same person or people could be behind the attacks. An NYPD official and New York's governor briefed the public.
It appears that an individual or individuals sent out multiple similar packages.
There is a number of devices, and there's a pattern apparently to the number of devices. We wouldn't be at all surprised if more devices show up.
This afternoon, the South Florida offices of Congresswoman and former Democratic National Committee Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz were evacuated after a suspicious package arrived addressed to former Attorney General Eric Holder. Another suspicious package addressed to Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters of California was intercepted at a Maryland mail facility. Republican leaders quickly sent out messages condemning the attacks. Speaker Paul Ryan called them reprehensible. Senator Marco Rubio labeled them an attack on America. And Vice President Pence spoke out at a campaign event in Pennsylvania.
We condemn these attempted acts of violence in the strongest possible terms. These cowardly acts are despicable and have no place in American society.
The FBI is now leading the investigation into the seemingly partisan attacks, but they come at a time of escalating ugly political rhetoric and deep divisions in the country, divisions many accuse the president himself of stoking. The president continues to publicly attack Secretary Clinton, encouraging rally chants of "lock her up." He's insulted former CIA Director Brennan as a loudmouth partisan political hack and threatened to revoke his security clearance. And a president who often derides the press has singled out CNN for particular scorn. Soros, a longtime donor to progressive causes around the world, has also long been a target of conservatives and the far right. One recent film endorsed by the president's son, Donald Jr., went so far as to label Soros a Nazi collaborator. The billionaire investor survived the Nazi occupation in his native Hungary as a child. At a campaign rally in Florida today, a somber Hillary Clinton said she worried for the direction of the country.
But it is a troubling time, isn't it? And it's a time of deep divisions, and we have to do everything we can to bring our country together.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Amna Nawaz.
As of this hour, neither the FBI nor other law enforcement officials have provided any motive for the pipe bombs. Late today, CNN President Jeff Zucker criticized the president. Quote, "The president, and especially the White House press secretary," he said, "should understand their words matter. Thus far," he added, "they have shown no comprehension of that." Let's check back into New York City this evening about this tense and sometimes confusing day. Hari Sreenivasan is there for us. He joins us from Columbus Circle on the west side of Manhattan. Hari, you are standing right in front of the Time Warner building. What's the situation there now?
Good evening, Judy. You know, it's pretty much back to normal on a cold fall day. There are police cars outside, but there's always police cars outside here. There's a lot of sat trucks or satellite trucks. There's also satellite trucks here because CNN is based just over my shoulder. So here at this point, there are reporters outnumbering police. There's a lot of people that are going about their day trying to, take in the holidays because this is one of the tourist spots right here on the corner of Central Park.
Hari, there were reports today of confusion around New York City beyond Time Warner. What do we know about that?
You know, interestingly, on my way here, this was, a few hours after the initial event had occurred, my phone was still going off, and in the subway, because authorities here tried to send the message out through an emergency text alert system for anybody that was in the area, including some colleagues of mine whose children were about 2-3 blocks away from here. Everybody got a notice to shelter in place, but that little alert didn't seem to turn off very quickly. So even hours after the fact, as everyone in the subway car entered whatever that area was, all of our phones went off at the same time. And at that point, that led to greater confusion because some people who hadn't seen the news, or even if they had, they wondered whether there was something new that they should be concerned about.
Can only imagine what that must have been like. Hari Sreenivasan reporting for us tonight from New York. Thanks, Hari. We now turn to two guests with extensive experience with security-related issues. Juliette Kayyem served in the Department of Homeland Security during the Obama administration. She's focused on domestic and international terrorism throughout her career. She's now a lecturer at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. Joseph Funk was a member of the U.S. Secret Service for 21 years, where he served on the protection details of former Presidents George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton. He's now the senior vice president of Torchstone Global. It is a security advisory firm, and we welcome both of you to the program. Joseph Funk, to you first. What do you make of this? Can you compare what happened today up and down the East Coast to anything else you've seen in your career?
Well, Judy, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. The events of today, I cannot remember of any concerted effort in my experience, other than some of the bombing campaigns that have happened in New York in the early 1900s, the Weather Underground, the FALN. But to target political leaders like we see today, no, this is something that I believe is new in the annals of the Secret Service.
Juliette Kayyem, what about you? Is there anything you can compare it to?
Not really. I mean, I agree with Joseph. The fact that it wasn't successful is somewhat besides the point. Someone or a group of people tried to hurt or actually kill the senior members of one of the political parties. And we haven't really seen that in such a concerted effort like this ever, I think, in the United States. And so that is why, the FBI is obviously taking it quite seriously. I will say, as Joseph certainly knows, there's good news here, which is the system did work. I'm reluctant to use those words, but to the extent that the Secret Service had these layered defenses to protect, in particular, our former presidents, really was beneficial for the outcome.
Thank God for that. Joseph Funk, tell us what you expect the investigation right now entails. What do you think they're focusing on?
Well, to echo Juliette's remarks, the system did work. The multiple layers of security did work. But in a much broader concept, there's probably, if an event like this is going to happen, the best place to happen is New York. The experience, the expertise of the NYPD is unmatched, and the FBI has a very robust presence, and probably the flagship office of the FBI is New York. So if we are going to see events like this happen, it's probably best that it happens in an area that has this highest level of law enforcement. As far as proceeding, the fact that the bombs were undetonated, were received in whole, I think is going to lead to a cache of valuable investigative leads. And I would imagine a pretty rapid conclusion to this I hate to make predictions, but with the bulk of evidence seized and the experience of the NYPD, the ATF, and the FBI, I think it will lead to a conclusion probably sooner than later.
Juliette Kayyem, are you equally optimistic that given what's here that it will be sooner rather than later before we know what was behind this?
I do, don't want to predict either. And we're hearing a lot about the Unabomber or the anthrax attacks, other attacks that utilize the mail system. Today is so much, so different just because of technology. So between the sort of digital footprints that may be found, video cameras, purchases online that are going to be followed with someone, buying a lot of one commodity that we should be worried about, as well as, the physical aspect of having the bomb, which may have fingerprints, which is going to lead to more investigative clues. Both of those are very beneficial for this investigation. The last thing, though, is the breadth of the delivery of these devices. Each of those devices had a certain number of vulnerabilities that are going to be exposed by a good law enforcement case. There's couriers involved, there's purchases involved, there's different states, and so I think in some ways, because this was so big, that the vulnerabilities of trying to plan this may be easily exposed and solved by law enforcement. This is not the 1980s where we were dealing with, similar type attacks, or even early 2000s.
Joseph Funk, we did hear in the reporting, Amna Nawaz's reporting earlier, that they are focusing on one or a group of individuals who would be behind all of these attacks potentially. Is there a type person who would try to pull off something like this? Clearly, we are in a very heated political environment right now.
We are, Judy. I really can't speak to motives. I would say incidents like this are usually traced back to a loner. One of the positive aspects, prior to sending a device through the mail, many times these people who commit these acts are letter writers. The Secret Service will have a vast database of letters that have been written. Comparing those letters with some of the packages sent today may help to identify a suspect. That being said, I would expect this investigation to take a lead into the political arena that we are in nowadays. Rhetoric does have results on both sides.
Juliette Kayyem, picking up on that, how is it, I guess my question is, we just heard Joseph say that the person who did this is likely to have already expressed himself or herself some way out there, whether it's social media, writing letters. So how does that affect the investigation here?
So it will be a part of both the clues of identifying the person and then also getting to motive. Obviously, Joseph and I want to be careful about sort of, making too many conclusions. But I will say this: a sophisticated law enforcement effort right now will look at who were the targets of the bombings and make a rational conclusion. Simply because it's a political conclusion doesn't mean that it's wrong. And so, we shouldn't let, being careful, sort of blind us from being smart, which is essentially someone attacked Democrats or CNN, which is aligned with Democrats, or George Soros. And so you're going to start from a position of someone who does not like those institutions and those individuals. And that would generally be someone who's not a Democrat or not left-leaning. That is not a political statement. It's just obvious law enforcement at this stage.
Well, we are just on the first night after this has happened, at least most of these bombing attempts, and we're going to continue to watch it very closely, as I know the two of you will. Juliette Kayyem and Joseph Funk, thank you both.
Thank you.